So, welcome back to the next chapter in the Universal Monster Disney AU. We are building closer and closer to our finale with every new video. I hope you all have been enjoying this. This has been really fun kind of building this universe with the introduction of each new character. I've been having a lot of fun with it. So without further ado, let's get into it with the Owl House, the Mummy. So, this story basically centers around a Luz Noceda, who is a archaeologist. She's archaeologist in training. Basically, her whole thing is that she's under the tutelage of a very renowned professor, Professor Ida Clawthorne, who her methods are a little unorthodox. She's very much, if she runs into a tomb raider, she just goes up to him and asks them to look pleasant. Ida is seen as kind of a wild card because she believes in she has a belief in mysticism, and this is a realm of science. We can't, abandon our senses to a realm of all these thoughts of magic and fairy tales. Basically, Ida's very much Edward Land Sloane's character from the original film. Anyway, so in here, Ida and Luz are headed out to meet up with another team who have discovered another archaeologist group who have contacted them because they're like, hey, we've been hired on this private gig in this unknown region of Egypt, and we've discovered an old temple that shouldn't be here. Can you help us out, please? Because our benefactor's very insistent that we get results. So Ida and Luz head out from the States to Egypt, and from there, the person in charge of the dig they're now being a part of is actually Ida's sister Lilith, and her dig team consists of Willow, Hunter, her fiance Hunter. There's also Darius and a few other characters. They've been all part of this dig for a while, but the one that catches Luz's eye is one Amity, her Lilith's student in archaeology, and Ida's comes from sorry, my head hurts. Amity's family is also from a pristine line of archaeologists and industrialists, and Amity's whole thing. I keep trying to say Lilith. Amity's whole thing is that, look, I'm here to show off the Blight name, as well as, become a, famous archaeologist an industrialist like my parents. But Luz is like, oh, you're so hot. So Luz and Ida Luz and Amity. I'm so sorry I'm getting there's so many names and my head very much hurts. Luz and Amity do start as your classic rivals and whatnot, but they do start to feel things for one another, and it's almost like they feel like they've done this before. It feels almost like every time they talk to each other, it always feels like deja vu between the two. So Ida, meanwhile, is talking to Lilith and her team, and she's like, hey, so a couple things. You said you weren't really honest about you weren't really forthcoming on this whole unknown temple that shouldn't be here. Do you got any ideas of what it is? And Lilith is like, well, we managed to get some early hieroglyphics, and it does seem like my theories are true, and what we all thought, the myths were real, Ida. This is the temple of Amenet. This is the pyramid that is meant to hold the body of Princess Amenet, the lost princess of Egypt. So yeah, we're doing the Tom Cruise mummy, because God knows, the mummy itself, it could have been so good if Tom Cruise hadn't touched it. But we're trying to, I'm doing something a little different instead of using Karis or Emotep. Anyway, so the now collective group of both Ida and Lilith's groups are now digging into the temple, and as they're they're reading the hieroglyphs and whatnot of of the lost Queen Amenet. There is this whole thing of like, well, who's Amenet? Like Hunter asks, well, who's Amenet? Like, and Lilith explains that she was basically a princess of a pharaoh who tried to use, who the legends claim, like she made a dark pact with the god of evil Set to claim her power and usurp her father and take over. But the Magi caught on and basically cursed her, not just to erase her from existence by striking her name from every bit of literature in the or hieroglyph in all of Egypt. The other thing was they gave her body an endless curse, so it could never transition on to the to the next life. So, yeah. Now, as they find as they're going through the pyramid, they are basically running into different traps. They're running into different kind of opposition everywhere they go, and it almost gets them killed a few times until finally they find Amenet's casket, her sarcophagus. They're like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then they discover that wasn't the whole story. They find the rest of the written words of what happened with Amenet. Well, it wasn't that she made she did make a pact with Set, but it wasn't to overthrow her father. It turns out the real story was that Amenet was in love with a woman from a rival kingdom, and when she died of sickness, it was supposed to bring the two kingdoms together. But if they got married, but the Amenet's bride essentially died of a sickness, and grief-stricken, she basically made a pact with Set, is like, hey, I'll give you my eternal servitude if you give me something that I can bring her back with. And the thing that Set presented her with was the Scroll of Thoth, which he actually stole from his brother Thoth. But the Magi caught on. They proceeded to, because it was such a desecration that she was about to do, they cursed her, gave her the Humdai, and concealed the Scroll of Thoth. So Luz manages to read all of this, and they're like, Luz, how are you reading all of these old hieroglyphs? Some of this is really hard to decipher, and you still need work on it. So how are you doing this? And she's like, I don't know. I'm a little freaked out myself. So as the story goes on, they bring the coffin in, and they start looking through through the temple and the pyramid and everything else to find the Scroll of Thoth. And yeah, so while this is going on the next night, Luz is looking over the sarcophagus and feeling like there's a familiarity there, there's something there's something that she feels pulling her to the sarcophagus. On the other end of that spectrum, we have Ida, who's like, there's something you haven't told me yet, this benefactor, this guy who's been hired your team, gave you all the equipment, brought you out here. Who was it? You've been anonymous about it. And Lilith explains, oh, his name is he's a count from the Mexican territories. He was a Don. And he's like, Don Marco Diaz. He basically said he believed in my research and wanted to preserve history like us. He's very much a historian himself. And Ida's like, right. And he was just giving you all this money from the goodness of his heart. And she's like, Lilith is like, well, I mean, he was very adamant about finding the about finding Amenet's casket, but also, more importantly, finding the Scroll of Thoth. And Ida's like, there it is. And Lilith's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, he wasn't. He's interested in He's interested in dark magic. He's an occultist. The scroll of Thoth is pure, like, unabated necromancy. You know, it's a defilement of the Egyptian gods. And Lilith is like, you know, I really do. Sometimes I wonder, like, why do I entertain your whole belief in the occult? And Ida's like, you really need to keep both eyes open, because this shit, it might go sideways. If we find the scroll of Thoth, we cannot give it to this Don Marco Diaz, because it is pure, unadulterated dark magic. So back with Luz is feeling like kind of dizzy and hazy, and then she just collapses right as Amity walks in and is like, oh my god. So she sends the alarm. The conversation ends about Don Marco, and they find Luz on the ground, like, frothing, and all she did was just touch the sarcophagus, and they're like, oh my god, is it like some kind of like lead poisoning or mercury poisoning that she encountered? And they're like, no, she just seizured up. It was weird. Like, it was weird. Like, how do you, like, what happened? But however, Luz was having like a flashback, and if you haven't figured out yet, yes, Luz is Aminet's reincarnation, and Amity is the reincarnation of Aminet's love in this story. So Luz gets out of her seizure, and she's like, you know, what the hell happened? I don't know, you know, what was that? I saw, like, visions and whatnot, and yeah. So so it was weird, because they're like, oh, you just saw weird stuff when you were having some kind of, like, reaction to the, like, you must have been some kind of allergic reaction to the sarcophagus. And Ida's like, yeah, sure, that's totally what it was. Anyway, moving on. Ida, like, talks to Luz later, and she's like, so what did you see? And she goes, it's like I could see Aminet's life flash before my eyes. And she's like, or maybe it was your life. And she's like, but Ida, if, like, that whole thing about resurrection, that's not real, but let's, like, entertain that for a second. I'm Hispanic. Aminet's Egyptian. And she goes, so just because the body, you know, the soul returned doesn't mean it's going to look exactly like the body beat for beat. That's what you know, don't believe what the movies tell you. Anyway, so from there, they're still excavating around, and then finally they find the scroll of Thoth, and they manage to finally recover the scroll of Thoth. And what happens is that they're all like, oh, cool, this is gonna be amazing. But Ida's like, there might be some powerful magic around it. Let me just make sure it's okay to open. We don't need a Ark of the Covenant situation here. And they're like, the Ark of the what? Yeah, never mind. So while that night, while they're all like, you know, Luz is still recovering, but she's like, holy crap, we found the scroll of Thoth. Maybe this can give me answers. But in the distance, they see, like, some person, like, dressed in black, wearing, riding a camel, and they're like, and just leave. And Luz is like, huh, weird. Maybe it was just some kind of bandit. But hey, we'll just have to post more guards. But what happens is, Luz that night, when she's getting some sleep, she feels herself awaken. She feels herself pulling herself to where the scroll of Thoth is, and she opens it, and out of it comes just this bright blast of energy that wakes everyone up. And what happens is Luz is fully reawakened as Aminet, and she has the scroll of Thoth. And she's like, I'm going to use this to bring back the person I love, and I will open a doorway for, you know, the forces of Set to find and fulfill my end of the bargain. But however, what happens is someone was also there, and that someone turned out to be the stranger from before. And the stranger basically, it wasn't who you think it is. But the stranger came in, snuck in, stole the scroll, like managed to sneak away with the scroll of Thoth after unleashing like a bomb, like in the camp, just causing confusion and stunning Luz. The scroll is taken away, and Luz pursues it in her new like mummy form. But Amity's like in tears. She's like, I wanted to say, like what happened. I don't know what's going on. But Luz couldn't find the person who stole the scroll from her. But she does meet a stranger, and he's like, I'm Don Marco Diaz. It's about time you finally awoke, princess. I've been waiting, I had to pull some serious strings to get this reunion, to get this, audience with you. And she's like, speak, mortal. And he's like, I come from, I too, like your master, want a world of want a world for monsters to exist. But I need something in return. Like in order to do this, we, my associates and I require something from you, not just your power. And she goes, you need the scroll of Thoth. And he goes, yeah. Do you have it? And Luz is like, no. It was stolen by me. I assumed it was you at first. And Marco's like, that bitch. He's like just thinking in his head because he just has that moment of that bitch. And he goes, and she's like, who? Marcy Wu is going to pay. So yeah, that's where we're leaving off, dovetailing into our last of these Disney Universal monsters, Marcy Wu, Frankenstein. So we'll get to that story sometime in the future, but I hope you all have been enjoying the Disney Universal monster universe I've been building. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this whole story arc, so hope you all enjoy the ride. But other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.